Alright, today I'm going to have you guys make some Bohr models for the first 20 elements on the periodic table. I've done a few for you here, and I set up your periodic table so that it looks similar to the actual periodic table. So I crunched this spot here, so I left this blank. So we're going to start with hydrogen, and then underneath hydrogen is lithium and beryllium, sodium, manganese, potassium, and calcium. So I put the little symbols in the bottom corner. And then we're going to do the other side of our periodic table. So boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, helium, neon, then we've got aluminum, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, and argon. So I've done a few for you. Let me zoom back out. This is what I'm expecting it to look like when it's done. You can use cut up sheets of paper. I'm using Post-it notes. It's completely up to you. So I did hydrogen already. Hydrogen on the periodic table has an atomic number of 1, so I've got 1 proton in my nucleus. Then my mass number here is close to 1. So I know that I, most times in nature, will not have any neutrons in my hydrogen atom. Since I have 1 proton and I want a neutral atom, I'm going to put 1 electron. So on this, I drew 1 electron shell, and I have 1 valence electron. Right, I also went over here to the other side of my table, and I drew helium. Helium has an atomic mass of 4, mostly, and atomic mass of 4 and atomic number of 2. So my atomic number of 2 tells me I have 2 protons, and since my mass is 4, I know I have 2 neutrons because my protons plus my neutrons gives me my mass number. I'm going to draw 1 valence shell, and since I have 2 protons, I'm going to draw 2 electrons. I also drew neon. Alright, so neon on my periodic table is right under helium. Neon on my periodic table has 10 protons and an atomic number of approximately 20. So I've got 10 protons, 10 neutrons, and since I have 10 protons, I want to have 10 electrons. So I drew my first shell. My first shell is full with 2 electrons, so I drew my 2 electrons. And I still had more, so I needed to draw a second shell, which I did. And I filled it with 8 electrons. So your outer shell will have no more than 8 electrons. All right, I'm going to do a few more examples for you, and then you are going to do the rest on your own. So let me set this up. I'll do a few for you. So I will do beryllium. So on my periodic table, beryllium is right next to lithium and right below hydrogen. So for beryllium, I have an atomic number of 4 and a mass of 9, close to 9. So I'm going to draw my nucleus. Right, inside my nucleus, I have my protons and my neutrons. My atomic number tells me that I have 4 protons. If my mass is 9, that tells me that my number of neutrons is 5. 4 plus 5 gives me 9, an atomic mass of 9. since I have 4 protons and I want a neutral atom, I need to draw 4 electrons. So I'm going to draw my first shell, and it's full with 2 electrons. I'm going to draw my second shell, and I need 4, so I'm going to put 1, 2. So now I have 2 electrons plus 2 electrons gives me 4 electrons. And this is my Bohr model for beryllium. Actually, I'll do a few more. Let's scoot down the table. Carbon and silicon. Those will be my last 2, and then I'll let you do the rest on your own. All right, so carbon on my periodic table has a mass of 6, an atomic number of 6. So I'm going to draw my nucleus, and my atomic number is my protons, and that is 6. My mass number is 12, so my number of neutrons is going to be 6. 6 plus 6 gives me 12. That is my nucleus. Since I have 6 protons, I want 6 electrons. So I'll draw my first shell with 2 electrons. That's full. So I'm going to draw my second shell. And I need 1, 2, 3, 4 electrons to give me 6 electrons total. So your first circle is your nucleus. Inside your nucleus goes your protons and your neutrons. Your first electron shell gets 2 electrons, and then your second electron shell gets the leftovers in this case. There are 2 electron shells because we are in the second horizontal row on our periodic table. I'm going to draw for you silicon. Silicon is in our 3rd horizontal row, and it's going to get 3 electron shells. So I've got my nucleus for silicon. I've got my number of protons is 14. My mass is 28, so my number of neutrons is also going to be 14. And since I want a neutral atom, my number of electrons also needs to be 14. So I'm going to draw my first electron shell, and I'm going to draw 2 electrons. I'm going to draw my second electron shell. And the second and subsequent shells are going to be full with 8. All right, so now we have a first shell with 2, a second shell with 8, making 10 electrons. I need 14, so I'm going to draw another shell, and I'm going to draw 4 more electrons to give me a total of electrons of 14. So my protons and my electrons are even. And I want to also show you, so the number of shells is dictated by the row that we are in your periodic table. So our first row with hydrogen and helium get 1 shell. Our second row with lithium through neon get 2 shells. Our third row will get 3 shells. Our fourth row will get 4 shells. I also want to point out that our columns, each of our columns gets different number of valence electrons. Valence electrons are these outermost electrons. So there are 4 in this column here. And on your periodic table, it tells you 4A. That tells you it's 4 valence electrons. So all these elements have 4 valence electrons. Right? All these elements get 5, all these elements get 6, all these elements get 7. So let me show you real quick. When you draw, this is our first and second row. So every one of these, the outer shell will have 1 valence electron. So there'll be 2 shells, the outer shell with just 1 valence electron. There'll be 3 shells with the outer shell having 1 valence electron, 4 shells with the outer shell having the 1 valence electron. Okay, in this column, we will have 2 valence electrons on the outside. So 2 shells for this one, 3 shells, 4 shells. In the outside shell on all 3 of these will have the 2 valence electrons. So we're just going to go in order with our protons. We want the same number of protons as electrons. Please let me know if you have any questions on this assignment. When you're done with all of your Post-its, you're going to send me a quick picture of them like this so I can see your work. Or you can send me a few smaller pictures so I can see what's going on. So a few like this would be fine. You know, one in the middle, one on the end. So you can see, or I can see what your work is. Please let me know if you have any questions. There you go.